I think it's fairly clear now, whoever comes to power after the next election, we're going to have a defence review. And I think a key thing that we need to focus on is making sure that Trident is in that defence review. At the moment, the Labour Party have excluded it effectively, and the Tory Party, while noises have been made to indicate that it would be included, certainly the shadow defence team are effectively excluding it. We need to make sure that Trident is part of the review, and that that review isn't your usual defence review. It needs to be far broader. It needs to look at our foreign policy, Britain's role in the world, and it needs to look at emerging threats like climate change, and have a broad take on where our priorities are, where the country's going, and then look at where we allocate our funds. So, okay. Right, to get into the costs, and I'll try and keep this fairly brief because I know figures send people to sleep. The first point I make, well, first to sort of ask around, how many people are aware of the shoveling scandal? Does that ring any bells? Am I the only nerd in the room? Yes, I am. Okay. The reason I put this up is to make a point about transparency, and it really hasn't been a very easy process to uncover the cost of Trident. I went through a very, very lengthy process in producing this report and going through government documents, various reports from select defence committees, National Audit Office, looking at parliamentary questions, looking at American information as well. And it was really confusing. A lot of information and the language is very obscure. It will apparently different answers will apparently contradict each other. And there was and we'll also be told quite often that commercial confidentiality is a reason that we can't have figures, for instance, related to older masting. But there was a point in it all where I was just thinking, God, this is right, there must be a document somewhere. I just haven't found the document that tells us what it is. And then I was reminded, I came across this quote, which is from 1982, and it refers to something that's known as the shoveling scandal, which happened when basically the Polaris missile was upgraded at the cost of £1 billion without the knowledge of Parliament, without the knowledge of specialist committees, without the knowledge of certain ministers as well. Not only did that happen, but that information was withheld from the public and from Parliament for 12 years through 4 changes of government. And reading that just reminded me, I'm trying to uncover information about a very secretive organisation, obviously, the Ministry of Defence. And there's a huge lack of accountability at the heart of the MOD surrounding issues around nuclear weapons. And that is a secrecy that needs to be challenged. Anyway, so I went back to trawling through the information, cross-referencing answers, asking new questions to try and clarify things. And what I came up with was that the lifetime cost of replacing Trident would be approximately £97 billion. And what I'll briefly do now is walk you through how I got to that figure. Okay, to kick it off, if you ask government how much will it cost to replace Trident, they will come back with 15 to 20 billion pounds. That's the figure that you'll hear in Parliament. It's the figure that you'll see quoted often in the media. And what that consists of is 11 to 14 billion for designing and building 4 new submarines, developing new warheads, 2 to 3 billion, and infrastructure costs, which is basically the bases, upgrading the bases, is 2 to 3 billion. And that is about 3% of defence budget when they're making the expenditure. The biggest single factor on top of this, because obviously there's a big gap between 15 to 20 billion and 97, is running costs. And that's something the government really doesn't like to talk about. It's a year-on-year cost for running the whole operation of having nuclear weapons. So it's submarines, running the submarines, it's refitting the submarines, it's the bases, it's the warheads, it's the missiles, it's the nuclear convoys. You get the picture, it's everything. And it's very costly. The reason I put this particular parliamentary question up is Parliament and the public were regularly told that this was a small amount of money and nothing to worry about. 1 to 2% of the defence budget. So here we have, if you look at the right-hand column, running costs, 90 to 91, 1%. And so it goes on through to 2000, 2001, 2%. Then when the White Paper on Trident came out, just ahead of the vote, that figure jumped to 5 to 6%. And that was said to apply to our current nuclear weapons as well as bigger forecasts for future nuclear weapons. No explanation, it was just, there's been an increase. Well, the Defence Select Committee asked, as you would, the Defence Secretary at the time, Des Brown, why that is, and I've highlighted his answer, which is basically they went through an exercise where they looked at what the costs were associated with running nuclear weapons, and that caused them to revise information that previous governments may have put in the public domain. So basically what they're saying there is, historically, they've always been far higher than 1 to 2%, and in fact Des Brown did go back and give some historical figures and upgraded them. Okay, so what does that mean in terms of real-world figures? Well, based on the 2006 budget, that is £1.9 to £2.3 billion every year that's coming out of the defence budget in order to run nuclear weapons. And if you look at that over the lifetime of a replacement system, that's 72.9 to 89.5 billion pounds. So that explains a large chunk of the disparity between 15 to 20 and the 97. One thing to follow up for anyone here that is in the business of I'll go back one, sorry. Putting up parliamentary questions is we still don't know what that 5 to 6% is, what it covers. We don't have any detail of what is included. And that's one of the key things I think we need to push for is transparency on costs, not just for nuclear weapons, but right across the MOD. For instance, does it include a percentage, as it rightly should, of the building costs of these two submarines, given that one of their roles and one of their rationales is to support the patrols of Trident replacement? Does it cover US-UK cooperation, for instance, the cost of using US satellites for targeting, having a liaison officer STRATCOM, and regular US-UK visits that happen with scientists between the two countries? They're constantly having exchange visits, sharing information. And does it allow enough for decommissioning submarines, future warheads, and facilities at Old Maston? Just a few questions. Okay. In terms of build costs, as I say, the government says that's 15 to 20 billion. The first thing to say about that is certain figures are excluded from that to do with missiles, and that is extending the life of the current missile, which they say is £250 million, and buying another missile halfway through the life of the next submarine that goes ahead when the current missiles run out. They put a nominal cost of that as 1.5 billion because that was the cost of the last missile, and it's really, really difficult to come up with an exact costing, to be fair to the government. There's so many uncertainties, what the US are doing being a huge factor in that because we basically get our missiles from the US. We've put 3 billion next to that, and that's on the basis of academic information from defence economists that say that these kind of systems generally double in price.